What is up, guys? This is PVM Vertigo, and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. And right now, we're just sitting in the little contracts building. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called administration or something or another. But what we are doing right now is accepting missions to Ike, because we are going to set up some interplanetary stuff today and do a few experiments involving interplanetary stuff, because we obviously have a future of interplanetary goals, because we've already visited Minmus and the moon, and we need to go further. So with that said, this brings us to quite the beauty of a spacecraft, in my opinion. And it is a 7-engine. It's got little liquid-fueled boosters right there. It's got quite a powerful second stage, and you can see on the top there, I am launching a base to Ike. And it does have a return capsule at the top, but the base will stay there. And it'll have solar power and stuff, so we might be able to even stay there for a little bit. It's got a crew cabin, a few docking ports. It has batteries and stuff on it, and a few science stuff, because we are going to explore Ike and plant the base on Ike in the same mission. And that return capsule at the top is what its purpose is going to be. It's going to return to Kerbin with science in its little capsule, and then we will be even further along in the tech tree, because we want some of those 3.5 meter parts, possibly even some bigger solar panels or different science parts. Either or, I really want one, but I also want upgrades to my space center, because we need to have action groups for those space planes, because if you noticed, I use abort for my action groups, and it's much better to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. And to get those action groups, you have to upgrade the VAB or the spaceplane hangar fully. So those are our goals for the future, but as of right now, on screen, we are setting up our interplanetary course. Fairly simple, really, going off to Duna. Just got to leave, going programming in comparison to the sun, or Kerbal, actually. So that's what we're going to do. We have the maneuver set up, so we're going to burn this extremely powerful second stage. And it'll boost us a little bit, but then we're going to use our interplanetary stage when that runs out. Now, interplanetary stage has crammed a ton of delta V in there. I was going to use nuclear engines, but I couldn't find a sufficient thrust to weight ratio that was acceptable, because although nuclear engines are pretty efficient, they are not that powerful in comparison to their mass. So it'd be kind of slow going, so I just opted to use a skipper instead, since we do have a base that can propel itself. It's not like we have to sky crane this thing all the way over to Ike. We do have other stages. And I'm fairly proud of this rocket. This rocket is one of the most complex ones that we've sent up so far in this series. And I'm fairly proud of it. I mean, it is quite the big spacecraft, and it's going all the way off to Ike to pretty much be a permanent base and home for 5 Kerbals. So the skipper is doing its job. It is propelling us into space on a escape trajectory out into solar orbit and right off to Duna. We are done with the maneuvers. We can stop there, maybe do a little small fine-tuning adjustments, but it's a pretty good maneuver. I like it. However, no maneuver is exactly precise. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do a little bit of correction maneuvers when we're in solar orbit, because we need a very precise trajectory. So we want to get close to Duna, not so that we're going to fall into its atmosphere, but it has to be equatorial, of course, and it also has to be close. It has to be close to it so that we can slow down faster. We might even do an aero brake, but I'm not sure about that yet. So yeah, we get our encounter, and we're just going to do our final maneuvering later on, because we're just going to deploy the solar panels and then switch over to a different spacecraft and then launch that up. And then 90 days or so from now, we will make the correction burn in space. So yeah, coming up next was kind of an experiment, if you really think about it. It is a, well, if you remember those space planes I was doing last episode, it's one of those. It's a better designed one, Haven't tested re-entry yet, but it's design. I did test it everything except for re-entry. I slapped a payload in there, and you will see right now that it looks pretty. It looks pretty sick, to be honest. It has I think how much is it? 11 intakes, 6 engines. That's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. So it should burn pretty high up there, and it has enough power to get off the ground really easy due to that large wingspan as well. However, I am pretty worried about the large wingspan, because large wingspan, I have heard, at least, it does not do well in re-entry. But it lifts pretty good, and I like the look of it. I also, as you can see in the front there, that is a fuel tank, except it is empty. You may ask, why did I put an empty fuel tank right on the front of it? 1, to make it look good and add an extra intake, but also 2, because I can add and subtract fuel from there from other places, so I can try to balance out the spacecraft a little bit when it's re-entering and or leaving for leaving the atmosphere into orbit. So those are crucial moments, and you really need to be balanced there, because you get a lot of re-entry heating and a lot of drag. And when you have drag spread out all across the middle of your spacecraft, it does not turn out that well. So that fuel tank there is basically just to combat that. So we have fast forwarded 4 times time acceleration all the way to the point where we fire our rockets. We are ready to press the abort button soon. And here we go, getting up here, losing our intake air very rapidly. I'm starting to worry because last time I flamed out. One of the last times during using this space plane. I think it was last episode, but it might have been in creative or sandbox mode. But see, I'm just watching it very carefully, because we're gonna switch to our rockets soon. Intake air is going down pretty fast, and bam, there are the rockets. 3 200 thrust rocket engines. I'm pointed at a 45-degree angle so you can get out of this atmosphere. Just get out of here so you don't mess up my wings any longer. And I also added RCS. So you can see there I can maneuver in space a lot easier with this stuff. I should have probably put some on the front. Oh, actually I did put some on the front there. It's helping us with the yaw. Because our fins are no help any longer, because we are getting out of the atmosphere. And we are basically reliant on our center of mass being lined up with our center of thrust and those RCS thrusters for keeping us stable. So yeah, we just do a standard space plane, enter into orbit, we burn our apoapsis all the way towards the edge, and when we get over here, we get ready to circle out. However, we have a problem, because all of our oxidizer is gone. I thought it was my liquid fuel, and I was kind of worried there because we wouldn't be able to get back home, because this thing isn't exactly the best glider. Kind of needs the engines there to provide stability. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to ditch the payload right now, and we're going to have to land some random place on Kerbin. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to open up this cargo bay. You're going to get to see the payload for the first ever time. Look at that thing. You may think that that thing is kind of small, but it is just a probe strapped onto a fuel tank, and it has a ton of delta V. And it's just going to nudge this spacecraft that it came from. But we're just gonna nudge it out here with its extremely powerful stability assist reaction wheels. This thing actually does have SAS on it. Who knew? So we're gonna get out of there a little bit. And after that, we are gonna burn prograde, because we need the extra speed. I'm just gonna fire up this engine here, this small little LVT 909 or whatever it's called. And we are going to boost ourselves into orbit. Now, right about now when I was playing, because this is post-commentary, I'm not actually playing right now, but this was when I realized that I did not put any temperature thermometers or any barometers or any of that sort on this probe. So, this is just going to be proof of concept, I guess, because we are supposed to be going to Eve, and I guess it's just going to be proof of concept, because we won't be able to fulfill any of the science stuff. So, oh well, we're going to have to do that by man, I guess. That is, except for the service, because you're crazy if you think you can come back from the service. At least at this tech level, anyway. Anywho, we are entering Kerbin, and we're doing it in a very stylish manner. As you can see there, my plane is completely flipping over due to its extreme drag. And yeah, I probably should have put the wings in a different orientation, but oh well. It's our first ever payload space plane. Actually, it's not our first ever payload. Forgot to include in the last episode, we did have one little test flight where we launched the smallest little probe you would ever see, and it's orbiting the moon right now. But it wasn't exactly the greatest plane because I'm not going to use it anymore. It was just a slight difference from the pterodactyl spacecraft. But I wouldn't really exactly call that significant since all it was a probe body and two small little 0.625 meter fuel tanks with an engine. So this is far more significant because we are going to Eve in this thing. However, there's one thing that's not going to Eve, or possibly not even be able to survive. This plane is spiraling out of control, and I need to regain this power. And only 2 of our engines appear to be on, so that's a problem also. But we are spinning out rapidly. We really need to regain control. We are only 4,000 meters away from the surface. This would be around $50,000 or 50,000 funds down the hole. We can't let that happen, so to stabilize it out. And can you do? Yes, we can. We're stabilizing it out, and we're actually kind of a flat spin here, but at least we're not upside down as we were before. And I counteracted with my yaw RCS, and we seem to be good flying now. So we just come down after all that, drama. And the Raven, as I will call this spacecraft, will be modified soon, probably to help re-entry. But I just kill my engines there because I'm going to come in for a landing. It's a very smooth landing on a rocky terrain, and we kind of lose some engines there. That was some funds we could have kept that are lost now. But anyway, we are here. We're going to skip over to the warp machine. If you remember this from the previous episodes, we are going to line ourselves up with Eve because we are going to send that spacecraft that's in a 100-kilometer orbit off to Eve. And it doesn't even have it might have a protractor on it, but it definitely doesn't have the time to warp around at that height. So we need this plane. It's actually a pretty good looking plane, and all it does is have a protractor on it to see the angle to Eve that we should leave, and the time, or the degree that we are, the exact degree. And we are switching over to the departing vessel, the probe, because I thought that I didn't deploy the solar panels, but I forgot that they were they didn't have to be deployed because they were the flat ones. So oh well. We're back at the warp machine, and we're just going to do the final little tweaks with getting to Eve. So we're just going to spare you the wait. Anyway, so we encounter a problem on our way to getting the perfect angle of Eve. It turns out that our Ike mission didn't exactly have a perfect trajectory as it said it did. Apparently, even though it said that it was going to do enough, it was really a few thousand meters per second short. Don't know how that happened, but it did. So we're just going to have to re-maneuver here. And that is kind of a problem. Good thing we have tons of delta V in this interplanetary stage. To be honest, we could probably reach Lathe in this thing, or Joule, because this interplanetary stage has a ton of delta V. So as you can see, this episode is pretty much just going to be setting us up for quite the interplanetary quest. Because we're going to have 2 missions that we have to juggle around. And, well, we're going to get a lot of science from the Ike one, proof of concept from the Eve one, just so I can actually fly there. And we're going to leave for Eve right now, actually. Because we have the angle, we have the maneuver, we have the delta V, and we have the skills of the drone pilot. The hexagonal or octagonal thing on top. So yeah, this little probe is going to burn its engine as soon as it gets lined up. And I have to do kind of a guesstimation here because I don't know how powerful this thing is. And it turns out that this thing is it has quite the amount of delta V. Considering, of course, that this is a small spacecraft with a small engine attached to it. It is very efficient. It has almost nothing to deliver. It's just got 2 parachute units and some fuel. pretty much all we need. Well, and some solar panels, some flat ones that absorb it passively. That's the word I'm looking for, passively. And as for batteries, I was intending on putting science data on it, but it's too late now because I can't revert. I don't revert. I don't think... I can't remember if I have revert enabled or not, but... Anyway, we are just going to use this as a proof of concept because, well, if we send something to Eve, I kind of want to send something to Gilly. It's going to be manned. It's just going to be a huge old science hall at Eve. So this is just proving that we can get there. And proving that a space plane can launch something all the way to Eve. And that actually gave me quite the idea. What if we launched a space plane that had a smaller space plane on it that only had rocket engines and then went off to Eve and then landed as a space plane, but it came out of a space plane? Would that be like space planeception, or would that be efficient? I might have to try that soon. You know what? I think that's how we should get to Eve. Don't take my word for it because I probably won't do that, but that'd be a pretty awesome way to get to Eve. Landing via glider. Sounds pretty nice. Anyway, so we are monitoring both of our crafts because we don't want our Duna one to get to its intersection with Duna, because we want to do a maneuver first and then maneuver to Duna. And I'm sorry guys if you guys are bored of the orbital view, but this is all we're doing this episode. Because we're just getting you prepped for what's gonna happen in the next episode. Because you can't just cut out all the interplanetary stuff. This maneuvering is very tedious. And this is pretty much what around 75% of Kerbal Space Program is. You gotta set up maneuver nodes, get to places, and then the action begins. Well, actually, let me tone that down. It's probably around like 25%, and the other 50% is building, and 25% is landing and launching. So we have an encounter, and I was not expecting an encounter, to be honest, because Eve is at some sort of funky inclination. I was expecting some sort of error that I would have to correct, like an inclination error or something, but we get there anyway. Anyway, so we're making a correction burn on our Duna spacecraft, or our Ike base, I should say, because that's where it's headed. It's headed straight towards Ike. Got a ton of delta V to land. We actually might have to do a stage switch soon because I think our interplanetary stage is running out of fuel. And that's going to be quite the problem because our landing stage needs as much fuel as it can to maneuver and get to Ike. Because it does have to land there. And that may or may not be an issue. Not really sure yet. But anyways, we get on over there. We set up the encounter, and this episode was pretty much a success because both spacecrafts are going out to their intended targets, and we did not crash anything today except for, well, mildly crashes, but those can always be replaced. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this episode of Kerbal Space Program. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see even more episodes of Kerbal Space Program, especially the next episode where we will land one probe on Eve, one base on Ike, and then return the science from Ike all the way back to Kerb. And it's going to be quite the task. And I'm not sure I'm up to it, but hopefully I will be. Anyway guys, this is PVM Vertigo. Peace out.